Pilgrim's Progress and its film adaptations, such as The Pilgrim's Progress, through the lens of A Course in Miracles, becomes a symbolic journey from identification with guilt and fear toward awakening from the dream of separation. At the beginning, Christian carries the enormous burden on his back. ACM would immediately recognize that burden as guilt, not merely moral guilt over behavior, but existential guilt. The belief that we separated from God and destroyed innocence. The ego's entire world is built on that hidden burden. Christian feels restless because the structures around him no longer satisfy him. The city of destruction symbolizes the ego's world. Attachment, fear, ambition, distraction, identity maintenance. Everyone around him treats the burden as normal. That's important. ACIM often points out that suffering becomes normalized in the world. Anxiety, conflict, striving, comparison. These are treated as ordinary human life. But something in Christian no longer wants to adapt to unconsciousness. That longing matters spiritually, not specialness, not superiority, a deep intuition that there must be another way to see. The narrow path imagery parallels ACM's idea that awakening involves willingness to question the ego thought system rather than simply improving it. And throughout the journey, Christian encounters symbolic ego states: despair, vanity, fear, self-righteousness, distraction, hopelessness, false teachers, temptation, spiritual exhaustion. ACM would frame these not as external enemies, but as conditions of mind. The slough of despond especially resembles depression generated by identification with guilt. The mind becomes heavy because it believes separation is real and irreversible. Then there's Vanity Fair. That may be one of the clearest ACM parallels in the story. Vanity Fair is the world of specialness, status, possessions, approval, identity, performance, comparison, image. Everything is for sale because the ego believes value comes from external acquisition. ACM relentlessly exposes this dynamic. The ego seeks completion through form, but never arrives at peace. Christian's discomfort there reflects the awakening mind, beginning to recognize the emptiness of external substitutes for truth. Yet ACM would also add nuance here. The danger is not objects themselves. It is believing salvation is contained within them. Then comes the valley of the shadow of death. ACM might call this confrontation with the ego's deepest fear, annihilation. As awakening progresses, the mind often encounters intense fear because the ego interprets its own undoing as death. The Course repeatedly says, your function is salvation, your fear is death. Not physical death alone, the death of the self-concept. And throughout the pilgrimage, Christian repeatedly receives help, guidance, companionship, and correction. That aligns strongly with ACIM's emphasis on guidance through the Holy Spirit. Awakening is not portrayed as isolated self-mastery. It involves increasing willingness to listen beyond the ego's voice. But here's where ACIM and Pilgrim's Progress differ in important ways too. The original story often frames the journey in terms of moral worthiness, sinfulness, and eventual entrance into heaven after enduring trials. ACIM radically reframes this. The Course would say, you are not becoming worthy of God. You never lost your worth. The journey is not earning salvation. It is undoing the belief that separation occurred. So the pilgrimage becomes less about achieving heaven and more about awakening from the dream that you left it. That changes the emotional tone significantly. In ACIM, fear is not proof of wickedness. It is proof of confusion, and forgiveness is not divine pardon from an angry God. It is release from mistaken perception. Even Apollyon, the monstrous adversary, can be seen psychologically through ACIM as the ego's attack thought system. Accusation, self-hatred, condemnation, fear. The ego survives through convincing the mind it is guilty and deserves punishment. Christian's struggle is fundamentally about what voice he will trust. That is ACIM in essence. Every moment becomes, will I listen to fear or to truth? The celestial city at the end symbolizes remembrance of reality beyond the dream. Yet ACIM would gently caution against imagining heaven as merely a perfected place somewhere else. The deeper movement is inward, the release of the conditions that obscure awareness of love now. And maybe the most powerful ACIM reinterpretation of the Pilgrim's Progress is this: the burden was never truly welded to Christian. He believed it was. The journey slowly revealed that what seemed unbearably real was sustained largely through belief, fear, and identification, not unlike the ego itself. So the pilgrimage is not ultimately about becoming someone new. It is about laying down what never truly belonged to you in the first place.